Sunrise Stories from Japan. I'm Toby, and today we have a brand new desk roundtable here. We have Charlie with me, first time co-hosting, and we have our new guest, Alexander. Thank you very much for coming today, both of you. Alexander, you work in the esports industry here in Japan. You do a lot of very diverse things, as we were talking a little bit off camera, and we want to learn more about the esports scene in Japan and everything that's happening. But first, maybe could you introduce yourself a little bit to our listeners?
Thanks for having me. My name is Alexander Shin Ito, Shin being my Japanese name. I'm 28 years old. I'm currently the brand manager at Package Inc., which is an event organizer here, based out of here in Osaka, that primarily focuses on esports and other subculture events.
Are you from Osaka? Or?
No, actually, I was originally born on Yokota Air Force Base up in Tokyo, raised primarily in the States, and then I moved back around 2017, and finished university up in Tokyo. Then I decided to move down to Osaka.
Why do you choose to kind of settle here in Osaka?
I should say Kansai. I was in Nara originally.
Okay.
One, it was for a girl, so that always happens. But Tokyo, I had all my extended family, and everyone's lovely, but there's a lot of pressure. So I was like, I'm gonna appreciate y'all from a distance. So I came down here, and generally the vibe is a lot more chill here. People tend to speak, more
Kansai
Ben, but also straightforward, which I always appreciate in people. And Tokyo is just too many people.
It's
foreigners, Japanese people, everything. Like, it's just too many people going in and out.
Very busy.
Oh, it's very busy. Yeah.
So with all this kind of moving around between Air Force Base and Tokyo and now settling here into Kansai, how do you get into the esport industry?
Yeah, so funnily enough, when I was in university and college, I was in the SoCal region, which is very popular amongst the FGC community, which is the fighting game community, right? I was pretty into Super Smash Brothers at the time, and I would host regular meetups and game nights in my room in college. Through that, I met a couple of people off campus that were doing content creation or hosting the streams of other major events. We vibed pretty well, and I went with them to a couple of events here and there, and that was my first introduction to it, but I didn't really pursue it heavily after that. Fast forward to 2017, I was working at a marketing firm, and that's when esports as a terminology started to get really popular in Japan, to the point where the government was pushing it. I think it went from like 3% word recognition to around 75% within a year. So Japan as a country was really pushing esports. So I was trying to jump on that train. I had a couple of business partners that we were trying to start something with. Didn't work out, but that was my first introduction, and that was also the time that I met my now boss, through a Facebook group, complaining about esports in Japan.
Cool. So it sounds like you have experience both in the States, in the FGC, and then here in Japan now with your work.
Yeah, I would say very little and more grassroots in the States, kind of hands-on, but over here in Japan, it's a lot more industry-based, yeah.
Well, what would you say is the differences between those two communities?
The biggest difference is a systemic one, which is prize money. You can't gather prize money here legally or in the traditional way that everywhere else in the world did. So, for example, if we were to hold a rock, paper, scissors tournament just between the three of us, each of us puts down, let's say, 1,000 yen, and then whoever wins gets to keep it. That's considered gambling in Japan. And because of those kind of stringent gambling laws, it's made it very difficult for that kind of environment that's profitable to be made in Japan. Also, gaming as a culture, I would say in the States, or I would say in the greater, Western hemisphere, versus in Japan it's a social thing, versus in Japan, it's a very isolating thing. Up until more recently. Okay. Yeah.
So you were mentioning the FGC, and for me, being in Japan, I'm not a huge gamer, but I see a lot of fighting games really popular here, but I don't see other things like shooting games, FPSs, stuff like that. Do you have any thoughts on why that is?
I will say that it's been shifting since COVID.
Okay.
Which is really interesting. In terms of why are fighting games popular, I mean, it's the birthplace of fighting games. And there's also a pretty wide age demographic for fighting games. Having said that, it's primarily 20 up.
20 up. Okay.
So the fighting game genre as a whole is having issues getting newer audiences in right now. The industry as a whole also is having difficulty making new fighting games with new IPs because the whole, I guess, kind of storytelling and the narrative with fighting games is that you pick a character, you train and you get better. You have to physically get better and you got to mentally get better at the game. And you want your character to, kind of go into the next game. So it's kind of like the kung fu trope of, like the old wise master is like, yeah, he's old and frail, but he's still going to whoop you type of thing, right? And that kind of idea is very prevalent within the FGC as a genre.
Do you feel that it's also maybe a very kind of cultural aspect? So my experience with esport is with games, I initially maybe with games like StarCraft, and more recently a lot with like League of Legends over the last few years. And they are games where, well, StarCraft is one-on-one, but League of Legends is you have to cooperate a lot. It's like a 5-on-5. And when League of Legends was released in Japan, I talked to a few people playing on the Japanese servers, and they all mentioned that during the games, nobody talks. And that is making it very difficult for cooperation, whereas when what we see often maybe world records in video games on these solo games like fighting games or like Tetris or so on, it's usually a Japanese person becoming very passionate about one specific game and just practicing and practicing and practicing for one very specific thing for like a microsecond of improvement. More recently, maybe you mentioned Smash Bros. Do you think this is like a cultural aspect to gaming that makes it so separate?
I think definitely there is a cultural aspect of it, of kind of honing your craft, doing that one thing. There's that anime trope of punching the same punch 1,000 times until you just do that one punch type of thing. The cooperation thing's super interesting. There's a really popular manga and anime called Blue Lock. It's about soccer.
The soccer.
Yeah. So the main kind of not appeal or I guess argument of that series is that Japan's good at baseball because roles are defined versus soccer, especially if you're a midfielder, right? You got to attack and defend, right? You have to think on your own individually and as a team, which Japan's terrible at doing. I mean, hard stop. Yeah, I would agree, because no one wants to take the leadership position, right? If it's given and it's designated, it's way easier to be like, well, he told me to do it, so the weight isn't on my shoulders, right? The idea of failing by yourself is way less than failing as a team, because when you fail as a team, you fail twice is a lot of, I think, Japanese people's attitudes. Because it's just I think that's just prevalent throughout the culture. And then in terms of gaming specifically, like you gotta understand, like gaming here developed so different compared to everyone else because it was honed at the arcade, right? If you wanted to play the coolest games, the most graphically like beautiful, the whole shebang experience, right? you had an arcade. Versus in the States, after the arcade boom and bubble, arcades weren't a thing. They were kind of seedy. Also, to play a $1 game in the States, it was 4 quarters, right? Which I do think mentally this does something to a person where it's like, man, I'm spending so much money.
Right.
I'm putting in 4 quarters to play this one game, and I lost to this person that like lives here, so now I can't win. Versus in Japan, 100 yen coins is just 1 coin.
Right.
And Japanese people are way, I guess, more accustomed to using it, right? In terms of StarCraft, League of Legends, the main reason why it got so popular in Korea is because there was a ban on Japanese games during that time.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
There's a ban on Japanese products in general. So because of that, during, I want to say, like the late 90s, early 2000s, right? What consoles were there that you could play video games on that weren't Japanese? Well, you didn't have Xbox yet. I'm not sure if Atari, I don't think Atari is Japanese, but like Atari wasn't making it. You had Sega Dreamcast, you had the Genesis, and
Nintendo.
you had Nintendo. That was it, right?
Right.
And the PlayStation, the Sony. If you didn't have that, then okay, arcades. But then arcades, arcade machines were really expensive, and then those were still Japanese.
So they turned to
exports.
computers.
So they turned to computers, but not everyone could afford computers because computers were expensive, and Korea wasn't making chips or computers back then, right? So then what happens now is a couple of people that do have enough, they have enough money to make PC bongs and net cafes, right? They turn into a social thing. So you bring a couple of your boys or a couple of your friends, maybe a date even. Come join, you play together, and it kind of boomed from there. It made PC gaming immediately a thing that you gather up together and then talk, IRL and play, versus Japan didn't have that till COVID, essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
So I actually want to ask you about that. So you mentioned the FPSs are getting popular since COVID. Why do you think that is? I mean, you can't be together in the arcade. Is that all it is, or?
Well, gaming in the arcade as a whole has a pretty negative stigma because, again, a lot of the people that do play those hardcore games in the arcades, it's usually like a train simulator, which is super inaccessible.
Really?
If you don't know what that is. We got to take you to a train
great.
simulator. It's great.
I think we have a
Pretty cool.
Let's do
Yeah,
that.
that's a good field
All
trip. You have the music game people. That's just or the taiko thing. And those are cool, but like
and the dance moves on
but from a casual person's perspective, right, that is just a time, money, and like social credit sink, right? It's just like, whoa, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And then you got fighting games, which is one-on-one, one person wins, one person loses. Also, that 40-year-old salaryman's been playing the same character for the last 25 years, and he's smoking. Yeah, I don't want to go in there, right? And mobile games are so popular with kids now, right? I'd rather spend money on like a Fortnite skin than go to an arcade, get whooped by some 40-year-old, smell like smoke, and be out of 2,000 yen in less than an hour, right? The main question was, why did FPS get popular, right?
During COVID.
Yeah, so in-person events weren't a thing, so streaming started to get more and more popular. As a result of that, PCs started to get, more people started to buy PCs, especially content creators, because there wasn't much to do from a gaming perspective. And that's when, a lot of these content creators started looking at foreign games. These have good numbers. Maybe I can get foreign viewers, or, it's just something to do. And within the last 2 years or so, especially Riot Games, so this is League of Legends, TFT, I believe it's called TFT, Valorant especially, just got pushed really hard and went viral a couple of times on Japanese Twitter.
Wow.
As a result of that, started to get popular. And then with Valorant, Japan has a pretty negative history with shooting games. One, because a lot of the games that are developed here, and this is my own personal theory, were made with hours of play in mind.
Okay.
And they were made with single player in mind. And this goes back to because, internet wasn't, like personal internet wasn't really popularized until like 10 years ago, I would say, right? So if a Japanese person was going to buy Call of Duty or Final Fantasy X, they were going to play Final Fantasy X till they max out all their characters and stuff, right? Pricing definitely has to do with this as well, because games typically in America are standardized. I'm not sure who does it or not, but I think it's a cultural thing. They usually start at $60, and then more premium.
I think it was increased
now it's $70. I remember the days of 50.
Yeah,
those were cool days.
I remember too.
Yeah.
I think we had the similar standard in Europe as well. Yeah.
Or the PlayStation greatest hits or classics that went down to 20.
Exactly.
Yeah, with the red box.
Red bar
exactly. Yeah, good times, affordable times. But Japan, the prices are all over the place. Very new.
Really?
Yeah, like let's say The Last of Us, new first party game from the States, $70 in the States. Over here, it'll be maybe 7,000 yen. Okay, fair enough. But
which is $40 more or less. 40
right now, yeah. Oh
ish.
god, this conversion rate's killing me. But some visual novel game, right, from some anime that no one's ever heard of. 1,2,000 yen, so around like
12,000 yen.
12,000 yen.
Almost double.
Almost double.
Wow.
Why? I don't know. Who's buying it? I don't know. Maybe it costs that much because not enough people are buying it. Right. Who dictates the price? Is the publisher or the IP? I have no idea. But that definitely kind of is ingrained in, I think, the minds of consumers.
Well, while we're on the topic of like actually just buying games, I would say that in the West, super popular platform would be Steam, or there is also another one. The name escapes me right now.
GOG?
Yeah, but I forgot. Epic Games, yeah, Epic Games.
Yeah.
So you can buy a lot of games through those platforms. Just download them straight to your PC. You often have discount, you have winter sales, summer sales. Is this popular at all in Japan?
I don't think the concept of sales is that popular in general in Japan, honestly.
Touche.
Right? Like, when have you last seen like a sale that was worth anything here? Yeah. That was from like a Japanese like company. They're like, we'll do this sale. Maybe travel packages, but even then it has got too many stipulations and blackout days.
I mean, so for on sale stuff, I generally see, you know, I'm not a huge gamer or anything, but like used sales are huge here. Like I just, you know, I live in an area that's got maybe 5 or 6 used electronics stores in a row, and it's just like 50 PlayStation 4s sitting in a window with like 2 PS5s at the top of the pile. Is that part of the reason there are no sales, just because you can get anything used for half price? Or?
Honestly, it might be. And like Japanese thrifting is like very good. Yeah. Like I would never buy like a used electronic in the States. Like, God, that's risky. Japan, all day, every day. Yeah, it'll be like a $20 difference. I'll still get the used one. Oh yeah, whatever.
And they got that little like card that says like gently used, and you look at it and it looks pristine.
Oh, it's pristine. Right? They got the box and the manuals and everything.
Papers, all the zip ties are still on.
They got the crazy thing is whenever I buy like a collector's set for like a game, they'll still have all of like the Pokemon card and like the sticker is still intact in the box. I'm just like, I'll just sell the card and return the game. Like, I haven't done that yet, but I'm tempted. That might be a thing. I don't know. But anyways, yeah. I forgot the question. I'm so sorry.
No, you answered the question. if the stream, the game download platforms would be popular, like Steam or so on, or if people.
It's starting to get more popular because PC sales are starting to get more popular. But PC knowledge in general is very low here. It's like, I got this PC because my favorite streamer got it. Like that'll be how people buy PCs here. Like the general understanding of like computers in general, I'm sure you guys would agree, in Japan is extremely low. It's like freakishly low, even amongst young people.
Even among the younger generation.
Oh yeah, totally.
I mean, are you not seeing lots of like custom PCs? Like, are people not just doing like the We Buy Power sort of thing? No,
it's expensive here. Custom PC parts are super expensive here because everything's imported.
Right.
Yeah, and especially now with the yen being so weak, right? I'm hoping that I know it was announced like maybe like a year ago or two, like, you know, TSM's gonna make a chip factory out in Japan.
The video game team.
Oh no! The chip making factory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So once, you know, Japan has chip making capabilities, maybe PC prices and general electronic sales will start to go down. But I don't know. It's expensive for some reason.
So we've sort of gotten away from esports a little bit. But I was wondering, like, you know, you do events for esports, right? Yes. What would you say are like the games that you see people go the wildest for here?
Right now, Valorant. Yeah, and I personally am terrible at it, so I hate it. But like I was genuinely surprised with how much that game has grown. It's a testament to Riot. It's a testament to all the big marketing firms working with them. It's crazy because more people definitely watch it than play it. That's the interesting thing about it. Yeah. Wow. So there's definitely a watching culture here. I think it definitely stems from the idol culture of just like, like some person that I like is doing a thing that I kind of like. Okay. And then what is it? I think streaming has very similar tendencies with like what is it called? Doom scrolling. Have you heard the term?
Yeah.
Right, where you're just like
social media scrolling forever.
Yeah.
I mean, would you say that like you mentioned idols, right? Are the pro gamers like getting to idol status? Are they like people got t-shirts and fans and
I
towels?
would say so, but not to the scale of the States or like Europe. Europe's pretty nuts with that, and Korea. Yeah, I would say.
Especially Korea and.
Yeah, Korea, you can like excuse military service if you're
delay it.
Delay it. Yeah.
Yeah. Still pretty big.
Yeah,
still pretty
big.
Yeah. All right, so not quite there yet here in Japan.
No, not yet.
You mentioned people like to watch a lot, and so people reach those idol status. So I watch a lot of video game streams myself in the past, and you see different types of streamers. You have some that are just they're good, but not like the best players, but they have a good personality. They engage with their audience and they gather followers like this. Whereas others are either current pros or former pros that are just the best of the best, and people watch them maybe to learn something or to just see cool moves in the video games. What kind of people are popular here in Japan?
I would say the former, the first one, just because at the end of the day, it is entertainment first and foremost. And if you're really good at a game, that's super cool. If you are inarticulate, no one will care, you know, or worse, if you're like a bad person, or, you know, because there's so many scandals in esports because, you know, the age demographic is generally younger, right? Yeah, no, it is weird. More lately, because the thing is, to thrive in esports, you have to be really good, right? But to thrive after esports, you have to be entertaining at the end of the day, right? So ideally, you're the latter where you're just very, very good and you can transition into being an entertainer towards the end. That's like the smoothest transition. And more recently, we've been getting players in Japan that can do that. Okay. Yeah. But making that transition is pretty hard for a lot of people, especially when some of these kids are playing like, you know, these professionals are playing like 10, 12 hours a day, right? And that's just not healthy in general. No. Right?
Probably not. I think we can agree on this.
No, that's not.
Yeah, the burnout rate is real for sure, yeah. And then on top of that, you're streaming your practices and constantly getting berated and critiqued and all these things, right? That is not easy.
So where are like new pros coming up from? Like, are they just appearing online? Are they all streaming and then they get picked up somewhere?
It's so confusing because the term pro here is so freaking loose. Okay. Like we had a couple of pro teams that we recently disbanded, and honestly, this is kind of doom and gloom, but the esports bubble as a whole globally has popped.
Yeah, over in COVID. The US as well.
Oh man, some of the greatest just gone overnight. Except if you're talking to all the right people, it was very obvious that like it was a lot of like venture capital funding, and then it's not lucrative, right?
Not enough.
Not lucrative enough, and ultimately, you know, a lot of these IP holders are like, why don't we just run it ourselves? And also, like, we don't really want to because like it'll sell regardless, and that's Nintendo's policy.
Right.
The main reason why a lot of like the world championships for their games is abroad is because the media backlash when something does happen in Japan is way too severe that they don't want to deal with it. Like, I think a couple of years ago, like some 35-year-old told a Japanese kid to like go die or something because he lost, which is hilarious, in my opinion. But they're like, nope, we're not doing it. Cancel it. The thing with Smash Brothers is they teamed up with Panda Global.
Right.
And Panda Global basically started to infringe on it. All the other tournaments that were going around saying like, hey, it's not ours, so you can't do it anymore. And then everyone kind of banded together to fight back at them, and then Nintendo was too much drama. No one gets to do it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Going back to in terms of where these pros come from, typically it's tryouts. It's some Japanese guy will have enough money to be like, hey, I want to get in esports. Seems lucrative, especially the merchandising. If you have a good team, we'll do tryouts, bam, and then all of a sudden there's an esports team overnight. There are a lot of quote unquote esports teams and pro players that are simply just got picked up.
Okay.
Because, you know, again, a business guy or like some guy behind the scenes had money and was like, hey, I want to start it. So then they're kind of seeing it as like maybe a cheaper and less kind of predatory way of starting like an idol club.
Interesting.
Yeah, is what I would equate it to.
So they're shooting for like that fan club sort of thing, like you're waiting 3.5 hours to shake someone's hand.
I've met some terrible esports players. Okay. As in like they're really bad at the game. Okay. To the point where I'm like, how are you, why do you consider yourself a pro? He's like, well, I get paid. And I was like, how much do you get paid? And it'll be like maybe $200 a month. I'm like, that's not a pro. But in their head, you know, they're part of a team and there's a jersey and everything. I'm like, so, you know, who am I to say otherwise, I guess, but.
That can't be full time. Like $200 a month to Niman per month is not a full time gig, is it?
I don't think so. Not in this economy, but some people make it work. A lot of and again, it keeps going back to culture, man, because a lot of it is at the end of the day, and this is the same with the creative industry as well, in my opinion, is that you get to do what you want to do, and you're being acknowledged by society as in you're getting paid to do it. You should be happy and grateful. Right. And a lot of the players have that attitude of, I should be happy, I'm grateful. I've had players in the past tell me, I'm not doing it for the money. And to which I'm like, okay, I need you to like go somewhere else then, because like we're a business. Like at the end of the day, I totally get your sentiment, with you there 100%, but also like, okay, we'll get someone else then.
So I'm curious about one point now. So esports, there's electronic sports, and that implies competition, and that implies tournament, and that implies prize money. And at the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned that, well, from a legal perspective, it can be considered like gambling. We had the example of if we have like a rock, paper, scissors tournament, the three of us, we can't just bet the money on who's gonna win and like take it all home. So what is the legal framework for organizing those tournaments here in Japan?
It is so sketch. It's very hard.
So it's gray zone and even grayer zone.
It's gray zone, and then the twilight zone, and then the dawn zone, where it looks like it's working out, but maybe it won't. First and foremost, like the main reason why I joined my company is that, you know, we're a very small company, but we've been around for 5 years, which is very rare for companies in general, let alone an esports company. But it's because we go through all the legal, like we go through all the right channels, and that's getting intellectual property rights, which is already like really annoying to do. That's making sure, you know, if we are going to do prize money, typically the cap for a tournament is $1,000, equivalent to $1,000, like maybe 100,000 yen at most for everyone to split
in the team.
That's the pot.
That is the pot.
That's not first place.
Yeah, and that is the pot. And on top of that, like that needs to be provided incomplete by like an outside person. It can't be the IP holders can't promote their own game like that, or like they can, but like it's confusing. I know Capcom is doing like equivalent to like $1 million, $2 million prize pool for their whole tournament, but then they're doing that globally too, and it is a ton of like legal work and everything like that. It's hard then for the community and the grassroots, like individuals, to start communities that are profitable, right? Because if it is profitable, then the company wants a cut of that check, which is understandable and fair, but it's very short-sighted and short-minded. Yeah, in that sense. Any Japanese esports title also you have to pay for, right? Versus all of the American titles, and anything that's popular globally is free, right? And it's paid for cosmetics, and it's paid to enhance the experience, right? So just the business styles and the business models behind the games made already kind of interesting and different, I would say. Yeah.
It sounds like there's a lot of legal work that goes on. Are you handling that on the Japanese side and the English side?
No.
Like,
on the English side, I'm the one that like, you know, reaches out. Hey, we're trying to do this thing in Japan. Is it okay? And typically we never push for prize money too much. Okay. So it's usually like, oh, you guys want to do our game in Japan? Yeah, sure. Here you go. It's pretty easy to get it. Having said that, you do have to kind of gain a little bit of trust. You know, when you want permission to use a game, right? It's always like, who do I contact? Is it just like the contact that's at the bottom of the page or type of thing? And yeah, the term esports, right? It's electronic sports, but it's been kind of bastardized and misconstrued in Japan. Like globally, it's been kind of misconstrued. Japan especially, it's confusing. We had one company that was talking to us. They wanted to collaborate on like an esports project, and they were like, yeah, so we got these cranes, you know, and they're gonna dig into the ground and we'll do a competition. We're like, what do you think esports, like what does esports stand for you guys? And they're like, oh, engineering sports. And I was just like, sir, you can't just hijack a term like that.
Wait, you're talking like full a
on,
construction crane?
Like they wanted to do, there's an old Japanese TV show series called Terebi Champion, which is like TV champions, and they get like the most wacky, like kind of like experts of a field. So it'll be like like people like that, like they'll be like really good at like digging holes with a crane. So now, okay, make a square hole, and who can do it fastest, or you know, try to unscrew a water bottle with a crane. I don't know, stuff like that, right? But they wanted to push that, so that they could get more younger people into their construction company or something. And I was just like, what? It's not esports, but okay.
It sounds like a really interesting afternoon, but
yeah, but you know, it's
okay.
I was like, okay, but and then on top of that, like the first time I saw like esports being displayed by a major company, it was at a sports convention.
Okay.
To which the two titles they showed was a soccer game that wasn't FIFA,
Not FIFA.
So that's already an issue. And then Gran Turismo, which is a driving simulator, which is okay, cool, fair enough. But also both of those are real life things, right? And now you have these two nerds playing these real life things. So all the businessmen that pass by are like, oh, it's just nerds playing video games. Okay. And it totally kind of misrepresented what esports was.
But something, so there's two things I want to touch upon. On your last point, like the same thing happened in the United States as well, right? So back to League of Legends, which I'm a bit familiar with. The basketball team Golden State Warriors bought the Golden State something, or they had their esport team in League of Legends, and a couple of other teams have also done the same. So like regular sports team investing into creating their own esports team and kind of banding together. But it doesn't seem that this has kind of had a misconception, and we have seen some marketing stunts where the pro basketball players would be together with the pro esports players and kind of hold events together. Because I feel like maybe in the West, playing video games has a very different image, right? And we see a lot of pro players, it's a hobby, they want to play and they play games. We see them in ads and it's kind of more normal. So the idea maybe was not so off, but
it wasn't off, but it definitely was a terrible first impression for like the stereotypical Japanese businessman. Because you had, you know, because I mean, the world judges based on appearance for sure. Like, you know, video games were for like dopey nerds in the States for the longest time, and now it's like everyone does it. You will not get bullied for playing a video game anymore, right? It's like, what? Debatable, but like even then, I think you would get enough gamers to bully whoever's bullying you. Versus Japan, like the term otaku, it has such a negative connotation, and there is such a lack of confidence in a lot of the players themselves because it's only recently become a cool thing. Even in terms of, you know, sports teams buying up esports players in the States, I don't think any esports player has called themselves like an e-athlete or they did in the beginning, but they got squashed out very quickly. You know, over here, so many people and organizations try to kind of make it equal, like a professional athlete and professional esports athlete, they're the same thing, because the level of competition is the same thing. No, obviously. The level of competition is definitely there. The mental game is there. Some of the physical things are definitely there too, but that's apples and grapes. It's not even oranges, you know?
So that brings me to the second point, where you said at the beginning you got into the esport industry at a time where the government was like, well, let's make this as a thing in Japan. And they decided to maybe invest some money, communication around it. You said the awareness for the term esport grew from 3% to 70%. So I can imagine NHK morning show and they're like, new word of the day, esports, and explain it, and then suddenly everyone knows what esports is. But realistically, what have they actually done to try to promote it? Because you just mentioned there seem to be still a lot of misconceptions around what is esports and the idea of the otaku and what that person does. And so what has the government tried to do, and what is it still doing today to maybe...
From the government's perspective, they've worked with a lot of marketing firms and research firms to kind of try and capture the essence of esports. But even then, like large firms, you know, they have no clue, because it's such, like esports and gaming in Japan, or I want to say like community gaming in Japan is very much so like a segregated, and I won't say underground in like the traditional sense, but it is like a thing that if you don't do it, you don't know about it. I know so many like kind of mainstream people, I guess, or like the general populace, when I ask them what's your hobby, it's like, oh, I watch videos, right? Or I watch movies, and that is their hobby in Japan, right? versus gaming is actually seen as like an active hobby for a lot of people, not like a passive thing that like, hey, like let's grab some beers and just play a couple of games and hang out later type of thing, right?
Yeah.
And I do think that goes back to the price point again, because it is so freaking expensive here for some reason. It's expensive. If you want to play multiplayer games, you have to communicate with people. So now that's a whole nother social layer to it.
Yeah.
In terms, again, like the government did try to push it, but they tried to push it in a way that would make money, which again, esports, as cool and as lucrative as it seems on the surface, the most cost efficient way to do an esports tournament is to just host it online. Doing it live in person is like the most counterproductive thing from like a money and revenue perspective, right? Other than to sell merch. If you're selling merch, great. But then it's mainly profitable for the IP holders, not profitable for the event organizer, right? Now, if the event organizer can make an event around a specific IP get big enough, and now the IP needs them, then that's good. But that's very rare and very difficult to do that in this day and age. And that was actually the thing that happened with StarCraft in Korea. So StarCraft 1 got so popular by the time that Blizzard realized how popular it was in Korea, they couldn't control it. It was already on TV and everything like that. That's why they're like, okay, we're gonna work with all these organizations. Hey, we made StarCraft 2, and then a lot of Koreans are like, eh.
No, we'll stay with StarCraft 1. But then eventually StarCraft.
Yeah. But like it's one of those things where like the community input and output is so integral, right? Like imagine if soccer fans had say in how big a soccer ball could be. You know, like that's the difference with a lot of esports titles, is that they constantly change, and they change so rapidly that especially for the players, it's just hard to keep up. And
there's updates every few weeks.
Every week, right?
So we've been talking a lot about like what's not so great about the Japanese esports scene. What do you think it's going to take to like push it through, right? Like Europe, crazy for esports. North America, crazy for esports. Whole world, generally bubble pop, but interested, right? What's Japan gonna
Japan's
do?
like 5 years behind, so the bubble pop has barely affected it. And actually, because of that, a lot of American, like large IP holders are coming to Japan right now, and they're like, hey, we want to push esports.
Interesting.
So like Riot Games, for example, is pushing esports super hard. And when they say pushing esports, they mean their games.
Right.
But fair enough. You know, they're the biggest, I would say, esports IP holders, right? I would say more than anything, the gambling laws need to change, and just how prize pools, and how, you know, there needs to be a sustainable infrastructure for players to go through, retire, start their own firms, start coaching or whatnot, to which Japan has a pretty loose, but it does have a foundation of that in their esports schools, which is super interesting.
Yeah. Like, do you leave regular school and go to esports school, or are you like dropping out of college and heading to the esports academy?
So low-key both. There are after-school programs for kids
like
Juku to get better at like how to click, how to think in an FPS, for example, right? But then there's there's a bunch of schools in Osaka alone, actually, that we provide a lot of our company provides a lot of teachers for, which we're also looking for English-speaking gamers that want to teach.
Wow. So what do you teach at those schools? English to gamers? Or?
No, it's enough English to then communicate with other teammates, because that is another big communication wall, right? Koreans, you know, anytime I meet a Korean that can speak English, they're fluent, right? Versus with Japanese, it's always like, oh yeah, I'm TOEIC 1000. It's like, okay, hey, what's up? Like, huh?
So it's not, hello, how are you? It's, they're on point B.
Yeah,
like,
flank left, like cover me, stuff like that.
Never met a Japanese person who knows what flank means. So.
I actually, we had a successful run teaching edutainment. Is really popular right now, right? So teaching kids English with like Pokemon Unite, which is a MOBA, which already teaching kids how to play a MOBA is really hard, let alone the English. But after about a month, you know, it would be like hour a week lessons with these kids. They would know, you know, they'd be like, defend top right, like come help me bottom, like enemy mid, like they could, you know, and they could communicate, right? So that kind of, I guess, not directly like English to English communications, but you know, I don't know what you call it. It's definitely verbal communication, but you know, communication skills is very valued and necessary in esports, right? So they teach stuff like that. But then a lot of it is the organizational structure of it, the production side of it that they teach at the schools here. Yeah.
So is it like a kind of a semmongako, like a professional
Yeah,
school where?
yeah.
So it's not only about becoming a professional player, but more about
how to retire and actually
like
have a job in the industry afterwards. Yeah. No, because honestly, like if you're going to the school, by then it's pretty rare to become a professional player out of it. But you know, it's definitely like whatever esport title you do end up working with, the more knowledge that you have on it, obviously the better. Because half of it is predicting, you know, when something big is going to happen, and then that turns into the viral clip type of thing, right? So yeah, there's like 14 schools in Kansai alone. It's
wow. Oh, that's
booming.
a lot.
Yeah, it's like 15,000 US a year to go.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it's treated as a trade school. Yeah, because then at the end of it, bare minimum you'll know, you know, basics on like marketing, design, production design, how to, you know, essentially do what you guys are doing here type of thing. Yeah.
That's super interesting. So the
schools are nice. Yeah, if you ever want to go, I can take you. They're pretty nice actually. They got the whole stage and everything to practice.
Wow, they've got setup.
Yeah,
like
they got a setup. They'll host events every once in a while. Primarily, it's to get their players acclimated to that kind of setting, like to a production set, and then also for the kids that are going to be working the production set to like then work with like a real one.
That seems to be kind of making the esport more as an industry, right?
Yeah.
But the industry revolves around the actual teams. If you don't have the actual teams and the competitiveness, you don't have the sports part of the word.
I wouldn't even like. I agree with you, but I wouldn't say teams so much as. Because here's the thing, right? Like depending on the game, there's a league format. Like with Activision Blizzard, they really tried to control Overwatch by making a league, you know, franchise league format that you can buy a team and then it goes into the league, and now all their players get X amount of pay, and it's like a proper job. Versus a lot of these teams are just groups of people that will enter tournaments and hopefully win. And if they win, then they get recognized by the masses for making money winning a tournament. Then they sell their merch, and that's their whole life cycle, right? Because you don't know what's gonna go viral, you have teams coming up left and right all the time. You have some of the world's best teams drop players like nothing. Like it is such a fast-paced environment that you don't know what team is going to be around forever. Like there's a couple of teams that, you know, went public recently and their stocks dropped like 80%, like
instantly.
Bam, instantly, right? It's like, oh, like it was a fluff piece kind of essentially, right?
So you see the teams being built, and like after just a few months suddenly they disband or the players are gone.
All the time, right? And then when you have teams that have certain objectives behind them, like there'll be like an all-female team. Okay, are they actually good, or is it just like for diversity's sake, which is really important, but how do you manage that healthily? Because esports is pretty toxic, you know, and there's no excuse for toxicity, and esports is just people are bad and we need to ban people permanently.
So about the toxicity side of things, I just don't know. Like, is Japan as bad as the rest of the world in certain places? Like League of Legends, famously super toxic.
Yes.
Is Japanese League of Legends just like the transfer of all that toxicity, or is it different?
I'm gonna say it's different, and then obviously game to game is totally different. Right. How toxicity is expressed here is also very different too. Can I swear or no?
Yeah, sure. Okay,
yeah. So like they don't have F you. Right? In the Japanese language. What would you consider as like the equivalent?
I mean, I would just make it an attack on the person, like call him a bastard sort of deal. Am I allowed to curse on this?
But like in Japanese, what would be the term that you would use, or that you think you would hear?
Like, something from an anime, maybe,
or like, you know, like insult their skills, like make something or something, like, you know, your eyes are like falling out of your head, you idiot.
So like the first thing that anyone that does talk goes to is shine, especially online, right? Which is go die.
Yeah.
Right, and you'll hear middle school kids and like kids say this to each other casually, right? That in my personal opinion, you know, as like a half Japanese person, growing up, that is how frequently it was used and kind of how it was treated. All type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Just go die.
But if you think about it, it's pretty violent, right?
Oh, it's extremely violent. Yeah, that you can't say that, right?
No.
You sound super nice compared to go die. So now the people that do talk and are toxic are extremely toxic, which then discourages a lot of people from just talking in general, right? And then at events especially, though, you need a little bit of that pro wrestling rivalry, a little bit of smack talk. But when the first time, someone tries smack talking, it's go die. All of a sudden, it's like, whoa.
It puts a chill on the whole scene.
Yeah, we crossed the line there.
Isn't that also like a crime? Can't you not tell people to go die, like in a public format?
Which is why Nintendo really hates, doing anything competitive in Japan for the most part. Or they'll stick to just kids because, most likely a kid won't say that type of thing, right? But like, for example, the fighting game community in the States, we revel on that. I love that.
No.
Oh, yeah, no. My the first major tournament that I went to was called Genesis 3. And that was Smash Brothers 4 for the Wii U. It was one of the first international titles where Japanese players came out to the tournament, and no one could speak Japanese except me and their interpreter. So after the first night, a majority of the Japanese players lost. I was like, hey, we're throwing a party at our suite. Do you want to come through, right? And what happens, especially in places like that in SoCal, is money matches.
Yeah.
Which is, both bet however much money whoever wins takes it, which the Japanese crowd was it was a foreign concept. But the moment one of them started winning money, everyone was betting. It was like maybe 60 people in like it was maybe a third of this room. And just like we had 4 or 5 setups and everyone was playing Japanese players and trying to win money. We're placing bets on people. It was very ghetto.
So basically, what's illegal here?
Yeah, totally illegal here. Kind of illegal in the United States too.
Do you have any pop-off stories from Thug Finals in like the back room with the Japanese pros? I mean, there's got to be something.
There was a Ryu player, which was very it was crazy that a Street Fighter player was in a Nintendo game, right? But no one knew how to play against him, and he just kept winning. I think he must have won like $200-300 there, and he was just like what's going on? Because that's never happened. First of all, like people have never cheered for him, like how the FGC does, and because as long as you win, no one cares. I would say the fighting game community in that sense is very diverse. You see a lot of trans folks, you see a decent amount of women, but even then, as a whole, the industry needs more women without a doubt representing. But like, it is that attitude of if you beat me, you're better than me. So you better beat the next guy, because if you don't, then you suck type of thing, right? So it's just very high energy. And just it's short-lived and it's fun, which is what I like about it. Versus a lot of esports titles are like anywhere from 40 minutes to like an hour and a half.
Very intense,
very sweaty. Yeah.
180 seconds max, 3 rounds.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I like it. Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that? So there seem to be a lot of roadblocks for the industry to develop here, and what do you see as maybe an accessible way for you and what you're working on right now to kind of start breaking down those barriers?
So what our company has had the fortune of doing is, because Osaka's international network is so small, right? I've had the luxury of meeting really like key figureheads, especially in the influencer sphere within esports. They'll come through Osaka and I'll be the esports guy, and then my boss will be the Japanese esports guy, and then we'll take them around, show them to all the schools that we mentioned, stuff like that, and just really get them connected, because it is about community. It's about communication, community, and kind of playing together, right? That's
at the base, it's a game, right?
At the basics, it's the game. It's entertainment. But you got to play together, right? And it's a form of communication that even if you don't speak the language, you can still communicate through the game, right? Which, thanks to COVID, thanks, more people have been introduced to using computers and the internet in a way that maybe they hadn't before in Japan, right? And so I would say it's a matter of time In terms of the legality behind the money and everything like that, I think that's going to change more so once the gambling laws in Japan lax as well, which is hopefully very soon because I'm a gambling man. But we're constant, like the moment that integrated resorts, you know, like in Osaka and I think Yokohama still.
2025.
I think that's right. Yeah.
For Osaka, 2025, I think.
2025,
And
I think
Yokohama-
they're announcing. I don't think it'll be done. If it is,
It's supposed to be done for the Expo.
Yeah,
so
I hope so.
2025.
That'd
But
be cool.
Yokohama, I think there was
it
I'm not sure,
2029
but
or-
I think it was either postponed or put on hold because of people voting against.
Yeah,
it.
my attitude is if you're gonna bet money, you know, Japan's probably the safest place to bet money if you think about it. At least from a brand perspective, right? Like, because they're gonna make sure they're gonna count it to the yen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, arguably it probably might be a more safe environment, but I think one of the main concerns, and we did have our very own gambling expert on the show here a few months ago.
Oh, cool.
We talked
missed
about
that
this topic a little bit more, and one of the key concern is if you open the doors to relaxing those gambling laws in one direction, it might open the doors to many other things which might then not be so well structured and kind of like a casino. Casino is like you can control everything that goes in and out.
Mm-hmm.
It's a business, it's a recognized entity, but it could open the back doors of pachinko parlors, of other gambling dens, and basically give more gray zones for maybe illegal operations to kind of take place.
Yeah, I mean, and my attitude to that is probably.
Very probably.
Probably.
But we know how the Japanese government is usually more conservative in this regard.
Yeah, I'm like probably, but yen's weak as all hell. Maybe do something, and changing Japan into an entertainment capital might not be the worst thing to do. I love Vegas. I go to Vegas fairly often. But my attitude with that is because like they allow horse betting and boat racing betting, which is wild to me.
Which we talked about in that episode.
So just everyone watch that episode, including me too.
Sunday morning in front of the JRA buildings, anywhere in Japan. I mean,
because my whole thing is, what if that horse dies all of a sudden? So whose fault is that, right? Or what if the jockey just, I don't feel like winning today for whatever reason? I love roulette because it is pure chance. I'm convinced of that, numbers, I'm okay with that. But if Takeshi, that jockey, doesn't die out there, I'll make sure he does when he gets off the freaking racetracks, man. Like,
so that opens up a lot of kind of
I don't know. Japan's weird, right? So again, like even like with esports, like everywhere else the bubble kind of popped and it's resetting. Japan's still on this upwards trajectory, right? So We'll see. As long as you keep a clean nose, I think you'll be okay. But then it's also a matter of keeping up, staying up to date. So like I said, the company that I work at, we're not just esports. We do other things as well. We do elderly research with gaming, stuff like that. Because you got to, right? Because the whole industry is updating on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You were talking a little bit about that before we started rolling, and I got to go back to it. So what are you doing in those old folks' homes with games?
We're working with a couple of companies to basically, since we're used to working with crowds and introducing an esports title to kids, to the elderly. Now, have you ever gone to like the Apple Store and then they'll have like teaching seminars for like gestures and stuff like that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, we do that with video games, but in elderly homes. Because one, y'all don't got too much to do. Two, it's for research, and three, it's been having pretty positive results.
What kind of results?
Like first and foremost, it's an extra thing that they can do, and we're getting rid of the stigma of gaming is exclusively for young people, and young people, it's childish to do, right? It's not elegant to play video games. Like, first of all, who cares? Y'all made it this far. But the research that we help with, they found pretty significant results and findings in that, apparently with a lot of the video games that we introduce, we usually start with something simple like a taiko game, then towards like Tetris or Puyo, like a puzzle game, to then like something a bit more stressful like Gran Turismo or something like that. And that little bit of stress keeps their mind fairly alert, and it's been connected to like decreases in like tripping, just higher increase in brain activity, and then
more
also
awareness, spatial awareness.
more spatial awareness, and then more opportunities for communication and community, which has been pretty big.
Yeah.
Long term, the end goal is to get a lot of the maybe 60 years old and up users right now to get into like MMO RPGs and get comfortable with that. But you know, at least with our generation, I don't think it's going to be an issue to play Fortnite with your great grandkid or whatever. You know, no one's
if it's still around at the
yeah, we'll see.
pace at which-
Fortnite is its own beast. Like that business model is crazy. They had the moment they did the Balenciaga and like Ralph Lauren collaborations to kids, I was just like, oh, these are weird times.
Yeah.
I couldn't even pronounce Balenciaga when that first came out. I was like, what? Balignia?
So are there, for the old folks home stuff, are there any games that surprised you that they get into? I mean, you mentioned Gran Turismo. I could see that though, right? Older person, they knew how to drive. They probably drove and now they want to drive again. But is there anything that's like more abstract or sort of on the weirder end? I mean, are they getting on COD and just blowing fulls up?
Nah, they're not getting on COD. Nothing that involves killing for now, because especially with that older generation, you know, the act of killing someone, even, you know, in a fictitious sense, is like kind of frowned upon.
Okay.
So, and like the main hurdle for a lot of people, and I'm sure you guys as well, if you know, the first time you played video games was controlling character movement versus camera movement.
Yes.
Right.
So the idea of strafing for a lot of people just bends minds, right? And you need to give them a safe environment to do that, and then someone to teach them to do that as well, right? Because a lot of Japan is teach, you know, show and tell versus just here, try it, experimentation type of thing, right? But no, I'm always just surprised when they come back more than anything.
Oh.
Yeah, more so than the titles themselves. It's like the moment you break down that wall and stigma of like video games are for kids, some of them are playing every day.
Wow.
Because again, like, you know, it's like a new activity that they can do, and they can move. You know, it's like for a lot of them, it's like chess but cooler.
Right.
Or like shogi, but you know, moves around. I'm trying to get one of my uncles into RPGs.
Okay.
Because he's like heading to like 70. I think he's like 75 or something, right? And recently, my grandfather passed, and he was just watching TV. He was bored, and I was like, "Hey, yo, uncle." Well, he's my great uncle, but I was like, "Hey, uncle, like, you're a pretty cool, hip guy. Like, you want to learn how to play video games?" He's like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And then he started slowly but surely getting used to it. He's like, "Oh, these are like movies, but I can control it. That's pretty neat." And so the stigma is definitely changing. Yeah,
That's super sweet.
Yeah.
Like, I love the image of you and your uncle on the couch just being like, "Oh, check out that super move."
yeah. I was like, "Oh, you're doing it," and then it says, I died. Do I have to pay now?" Or like, I got him playing Dark Souls.
Okay.
That wasn't a good. That wasn't a good introduction.
Maybe one step too far.
Yeah, it was experimenting.
You're not putting them on COD, but you're setting them up against the asylum demon.
Well, yeah,
what are you doing to these
because
people?
you know, it's okay. They're not people. They're demons. He's like,
Right.
"Oh, okay, cool. I'm like a knight." That's kind of.
So do you feel like with everything you said, it seems that the direction for change in the esports scene in Japan is through those grassroots movements, right?
Yeah, I really think
through taking your family to a game, pulling out the Switch with your uncle or parents and just, oh, let's play together one night, or
Yeah, it's really creating more spaces where normal people can casual users can interact with it in a way that is healthy and competitive, but not sweaty. You know?
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that's where we need to head.
Like, so for example, back in the States, right? Like when the Wii came out, it was like you can bowl with your grandma in your living room, right? Is that anything here? I mean, are people like grabbing the Switch and being like, you know, they're playing the bowling game or the darts game?
I don't think so. I think motion controls were definitely a gimmick back then, and more so even now. The Taiko game and like the Gran Turismo, the driving simulator in that sense, kind of do follow those lines because it's not too gamey. Like it's not buttons, right? But moving forward, a lot of it doesn't even have buttons anymore. Right? It's just gestures because it's all, mobile. So. No, I would say until VR kind of gets really popular again, we won't have too many of those physical movements. There's a title called Hado, which is like for Hadoken, but it's like a VR 3v3 like VR mixed reality game which is like cool in concept, but in execution looks really kind of dorky.
Okay.
So it's that, and like you can only play it at designated places, and on top of that, like there's just no space in Japan. You know, it's so much more cost efficient to do this and play a game, an awesome game, than you got to flail
Moving
your
around,
arms, and now you just you know, you hit the ceiling, you hit the walls, like yeah.
All right.
For you personally, now you've been part of this industry basically from its birth here in Japan or its development in Japan, the esport industry. You've seen a lot of change. What are some of the things that you personally would love to do or achieve here in Japan?
I definitely want to create more events and opportunities for Japanese players to interact with international players. I think that's just foreigners in general have that feeling of, guys, come on, let more of them in and hang out.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not bad to interact with different cultures and different people, especially when you guys, you know, love the same thing and communicate through the same means. More recently, Japan's had more international gaming events like Evo Japan, like DreamHack, which is really cool.
Oh, DreamHack came to Japan.
DreamHack came to Japan, which is really cool, and something that we as a company also aspire to be. But also, it's big corporations and big groups coming into Japan, not understanding Japan and the grassroots communities that do exist here. And then wondering, wait, why didn't it go off? Like, why didn't it pop off like it did?
Why didn't it have like a full house like the League of Legends
like
World
in the West,
Finals?
exactly, right? So, you know, a lot of I worked formerly in like luxury furniture. Somehow,
Far away from.
Yeah,
far away from
what's
esports.
the line there? Luxury furniture to gaming?
No. But so what I wanted to say was, like, when I worked in there, I had so many of those brands kind of come to us and be like, yeah, you know, like, we've been in Asia forever. Like, I worked in Hong Kong for 10 years. I worked in Korea for 20 years. I'm like, that's great. That's not Japan, you know? And I think a lot of these bigger entities are starting to understand just how isolated Japan is in culture and in thinking, but more importantly, digitally. It's so isolated. Like, Japanese, like, as much of a thing as Black Twitter is its own thing, Japanese Twitter is its own, like, monster. Like, it's wild. You know, it's so crazy how connected and not connected Japan still is.
Yeah.
Baffles me every day.
Its own ecosystem.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, thank you very much. I think you answered like a lot of our questions and it was super interesting. Maybe there's something we didn't ask that you felt like you wanted to talk about today. Some aspect of maybe what you're trying to do in Japan with the esports scene or the industry itself.
No, I think what you guys are doing, you know, stuff like this is really great. I really, again, you know, when we talked on the phone, I was like, really like what you guys are doing. More than anything, I really like the quality with which what you guys are doing.
We have Andrew to thank for this.
Yeah, really.
Who's sitting over there, making sure the cameras are rolling.
No, seriously, yeah, no, because that is the thing that's lacking in Japan. Because Japan definitely, it used to be a country of quality, but now it's definitely a country of quantity. And I'll say that as a Japanese person. Like, the types of entertainment is very cookie cutter and very template based. The quality control is not a thing that's I guess held to as high a regard as it was in the past. And I think, you know, podcasts like this, I think creative projects that involve, you know, foreign expats and, you know, like-minded Japanese folks and vice versa are the way to do it. So thanks for having me.
No, thank you very much for coming. Before I let both of you go,
Oh God.
I have a few questions.
Oh, okay.
It's time for trivia.
Oh boy.
And we're going to talk about the video game industry in Japan. I prepared a few questions. Usually Andre has 3, but let's see how many we can go through.
You brought an actual professional
to
fight a
but
challenge.
let's
Professional
see.
in big
Let's
quotes.
see.
Casual professional.
So questions
Get
will
blown
be
out.
related to games, companies, creators, a little bit of everything.
Okay.
And my first question is, when did Pac-Man first hit the shelves?
Oh, I have no idea.
What
That's
I mean, it's before I was born.
That's before all of our age, no?
I mean, it's
Possibly, I don't. Well, yeah, I think so.
It's 19 something. Like it didn't come out
Well,
in the 1800s,
well, it's
right?
not 1950. I can tell you that much. I'm gonna say late 1980s.
Late 1980s. What's your guess?
I'm gonna price this
wait.
right. You. I'm gonna go 1989 and just like lock it in.
Wait. I'm gonna go. Actually, I'm gonna back down. I'm gonna back down hard. I'm gonna say 82.
All right, he's got early 80s.
You're closer. It was released in 1980.
Yeah, I had a feeling
Alright,
because
yeah.
you know why I had a feeling though, because of freaking Stranger Things. It's like anything that showed.
You brought a ringer. Like
Yeah.
Anything that
show.
showed is like, okay, that's probably like 80s, right?
Alrighty. Now, question number 2. I have a game that you're both familiar with.
Okay.
Probably.
What?
Does Pokemon ring a bell?
Yeah, of course.
I've heard of
All
it
right.
Once.
So, Nintendo made this game famously, but they didn't do it alone.
Yeah.
They worked with another company to kind of release and promote and everything.
Okay.
And you can see the name of that game usually when you start it.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah.
I got this.
So
You wanna
what's
do it
the
together?
name?
Yeah.
1, 2.
3, 1.
Wait.
I didn't say
Game
it.
Freak.
Yeah, Game Freak.
Yeah, right,
Okay.
right.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
I like how you
Good.
went.
Yeah, I went up. You went down. We're all over the place.
Game Freak, correct. All right, I have another question here. Are you familiar with the series Metal Gear Solid?
Yes. Oh, of course. Yeah,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
coming out with a remake.
Yeah.
The 3.
Snake.
Coming out with a remake.
So,
I'm very excited.
who's the director behind it?
Hideo
come on,
Kojima.
yeah.
Well, there you go. Both of you know.
All right.
So my questions were too easy, actually. I need to. Okay, I have another one. And maybe a little bit more niche. Are you familiar with the famous meme of the attorney
Oh, yeah,
that
of course.
raises his hand?
The
Yes.
attorney, yeah.
From the game
Okay,
Ace
yeah,
Attorneys?
Yeah.
Which company made
Oh
this game?
God.
Oh, I know that one.
All right, you can take it. I
Yeah?
don't know. I
It's
have no clue.
Capcom.
Correct. And you
Yeah.
can actually see the office is just
Oh.
over there. Yeah.
He's in Marvel versus Capcom.
Capcom, yep.
He's fighting the Hulk.
Yep.
How could I have forgotten?
Yeah. That's how I remember the 2.
God, you watch a lawyer fight a giant green like ogre, and you can forget that somehow. The world is coming to an end.
It was a good character.
Yeah, God damn.
I have a much easier
Okay.
question. We talked about this recently. Nintendo released the Switch.
All right.
In which year?
Oh, God.
Man, it's been like more years than you'd expect. I know that.
I feel like it was like pre-corona. Like
It's definitely pre-corona. Yeah, I'm gonna say 2018.
I'm gonna say I also want to go with 2018, but I'll go 2017 just to like take a different year.
Okay.
And you got it right.
Oh,
Dang it! It was 2017.
baby.
Yeah, 2017. It's already
It's
quite a
probably
few years.
December or something. I mean, it's the
Nah,
same.
nah,
We just
nah,
call it.
nah,
We call it
nah,
even.
My very last question.
Okay.
He still has more.
Yeah, I have one more. I thought this one you might be interested in
Alright,
because I
for
know
me.
you have an affinity for this or you're interest in this topic.
Alright.
It's very niche, so I didn't know the answer either. But are you familiar with a game series called Yakuza?
Oh,
Yeah, of course.
Hello,
So, who's behind it? Which studio?
Sega.
Here you go.
Yeah.
It's
Said it
actually
after
not.
me.
Sorry, yeah.
It's a studio called Ryuga Gotoku Studio.
Oh,
okay.
I mean, it's the
that
publisher
one I wouldn't have
Sega.
known.
Yeah.
That
No.
one I wouldn't have known actually.
Yuga Gotoku is the Japanese
Yeah.
title for the Yakuza games, and I'm sure that they made their own studio or something.
Sounds about right.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
nah,
publisher
got me
Sega.
on that one.
No,
yeah.
we got publisher Sega. We got it.
Well-
we don't count him.
That was it for my questions. Thank you both for your good guesses. Actually, pretty good accuracy this time around.
I'm not a fraud.
Literally his profession.
Thank you again, Charlie, for co-hosting this week. Thank you, Alexander, for coming and
Thank you for
sharing your
having me.
knowledge and insights into the esport industries. This was Fish and Rice Stories from Japan. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.